Hello and welcome to GameSack. Let's take a look at some sequels and follow-ups that don't live up to their predecessor or predecessors. Usually video games are basically the opposite of movies, wherein sequels tend to get better and better than the games that came before it. Not these games though. Anyway, let's start with Blaster Master 2. Blaster Master was released on the NES by Sunsoft in 1988. This was quite an amazing game for its time, and it still holds up today. Your dumb frog escapes, gets toxicized, and you jump down a random hole and find a tank to rescue him. Video gamers love mazes, and this game presents some pretty big ones for you. Jumping around and shooting with your tank feels really good, with just the right amount of momentum applied. You can even hop out of your tank to explore and battle as a little guy. Be careful though, as falling from pretty much any height will kill you. The little guy can enter caves or whatever they are to explore from a top-down perspective. These mazes are often more devious and usually where you're going to find the boss that you need to fight. And the bosses here can be pretty epic. Defeat them and you gain a power-up for your tank, which will allow you to reach previously unreachable places in the level. The graphics are excellent and detailed, all things considered. And of course, the music is fantastic. At the time I first heard this game, it was probably some of the best music in a video game I'd ever heard. I was so disappointed that there was nothing like this on Sega, so when the Genesis came out, Blaster Master 2 was eventually announced. It was released in 1993 from Sunsoft. Can you imagine how awesome Blaster Master is going to be on the Genesis? Well, keep imagining, because it's not. Instead of making the game themselves like they did with the original, they farmed it out to Software Creations, a Western developer who is pretty hit or miss on the NES. They were all miss on the Genesis, however, and this one is no exception. At first glance, the visuals do look pretty awesome. I love the artwork and the colors they use in this game. It doesn't look bad at all. My biggest complaint with the visuals would probably be that the far background never moves at all, it's locked in place. But hey, at least there's some separation. Gameplay-wise, the side view tank scenes control decently, though there is more momentum applied and your tank feels much lighter, like it's made out of plastic instead of metal like the first game. You can still hop out as the little guy to explore and fight, and the game relies much more on exploring in this manner. Fortunately, he's decently well equipped to handle this. And yes, he can still easily die from falls. His worst feature is probably the speed in which he navigates the ladders. And there are a lot of ladders here. In caves, he can enter a boss room and suddenly he's not so little anymore. Each level has multiple boss fights. The concept is similar to the original. Get an item to help your tank navigate the level. Or go to part of the level that your tank can't pass, shoot it with your gun, and then make your way back to the tank and move on. Each level ends with an overhead tank segment. These replace the overhead run and gun sections from the original game. Here though, your tank has the momentum slider maxed out and you're very bouncy. These are the least fun sections of the game, and they're usually not short. Get past this and it's straight to the next level. There's no backtracking to previous levels here like there is in the first title. Although the game isn't incompetent by any means, it's nowhere near as fun or as well designed. It feels like a Western game, and back then, those games were inferior. Sorry, but generally, it's true for the time. The game's worst sin, though, is the sound and music. The stuff here uses very basic composition and poor choices in instrumentation and sound quality. They just didn't care if this game sounded good. How could you farm this one out, Sunsoft? Afterburner from Sega was awesome in the arcades. There it was generally called Afterburner 2, but that just means that it's the finished version of the game. It wasn't actually a sequel or anything. You fly an F-14 and you shoot down enemies. Sometimes you get your missiles restocked. Other times you land and get refueled. And other times you fly through canyon walls while you try to take out enemy bases. But mostly you're just flying around in the air taking out enemy planes. Not amazing, but still fun. The Master System port was simply called Afterburner. It was okay for its time. We couldn't expect too much more from the console, I guess. Well, maybe we could, but this is what we got. The Genesis port, though, was called Afterburner 2. This was a pretty good port of the arcade, all things considered. So much better than the Master System game, but it was still missing quite a bit from the arcade, particularly the refueling sequences where you land. But this game was still super fun. And then Afterburner 3 was announced for the Sega CD. Oh hell yeah, boys, with the built-in scaling and rotation features it has, it's gonna be awesome! But instead, it wasn't. What in the hell is this anyway? It looks like garbage, much worse than Afterburner 2 did on the Genesis. It defaults to a cockpit view, which is way less exciting than the behind-the-plane view of the original Afterburner. If an enemy plane comes up from behind, it will zoom out and show your plane until you can get rid of him, and then it's back inside the cockpit you go. You can choose to keep it behind your plane at all times in the options, but why is there a box around it? That is so dumb. Nobody wants to see this box. And look how sparse, tiny, and choppy this all is. When you're moving fast and the horizon tilts, the objects on the ground actually precede the horizon. Look at that. That's just sad. This is actually just a port of Strike Fighter, which itself is a Japan-only arcade sequel to the boring G-Lock game. Sega loved G-Lock way more than Afterburner for some reason. But at least we got some awesome CD quality Afterburner tunes. Other than the rather bizarre horn section, they sound fantastic. If you get a high enough score, you can enter your name.
Bangladesian.
Wait, what did he just say?
Bangladesian.
Bangladesians?
Bangladesian.
Okay then. Believe it or not, this is still much better than the Japanese Mega CD version. It has fewer choices. For example, you can't choose to play outside of the cockpit unless you find a hidden option. And the music is mostly this laid-back crap instead of the awesome Afterburner tunes. To say this game was a disappointment is an understatement. How could it be so much worse than a 4 meg cartridge game? At least we'd eventually get Afterburner Climax to make up for this.
Bangladesian.
I wonder how disappointed other people were with this next one. I mean, it's not a bad game, but it's almost impossible to live up to the original, so it seems a lot worse than it is. Square released Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo in 1995. This is an epic RPG where you travel through time. Your actions in the past have consequences in the future, and as a result, this game has about 500 different endings. Okay, actually 13 endings, though I've only personally seen one, and that was perfectly satisfying for me. The game has some good character development, an intriguing story, and the gameplay is tight. The battles aren't as annoying as they are in many other RPGs, and they can often be avoided if you're getting a little tired of fighting. Oh, and the music is top-notch, really making this a well-rounded product and one of my favorite RPGs from the entire 16-bit era. Then in 1999, Square released Chrono Cross on the PlayStation. Chrono Trigger upgraded to PlayStation quality? Hell yeah, this is gonna be amazing. Or at least it was supposed to be. The story now focuses on an entirely new set of characters, which is typical of JRPG sequels. I mean, why would you want to go through another adventure with those same crusty characters that you know so well? Gross, yuck, no thank you, I like those guys too much. Give me someone brand new that I don't know at all. I'm being a smartass if you couldn't tell. Some of the old characters do make appearances though, kind of. Oh, and there are 45 characters that you can get here. Yikes, that is a lot. I'd rather play a game with just a few characters that I can get to know, like Suikoden. In this one, you move across 2 dimensions, simply called Homeworld and Another World. You now run around on pre-rendered screens at different angles. These screens can sometimes even have some choppy scrolling. You can still avoid a lot of battles, but of course there are some battles where that's not going to happen. The battles are a bit different and certainly more slow. They especially drag on if you and the enemy are using elemental attacks. That's because these attacks need to be extremely cinematic and take up lots and lots of time. The first time you see these, it's pretty cool. The 73rd time, yeah, not so much. Wouldn't be so bad if they were skippable. The game's progression is also slower and it feels a bit bloated to me. I played this game for about 24 hours before I became bored and just decided never to go back to it. And I was still only on disc 1. Man, how long is this game? I think maybe if I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, I may have given it at least a few more hours. Maybe not though, as it's not as captivating as Chrono Trigger was. With Chrono Trigger, you think about it when you're not playing it, and you can't wait to get back to it. Chrono Cross feels more like a chore in comparison, with lots of boredom between the fun stuff. It did get some great reviews when it came out, but I think reviewers of the time were still up their own ass about how great the PlayStation and everything on it was. I will say that the game has incredible music though, arguably better than the first game in spots. It's definitely not a horrible game by any means, but in my opinion, it's a long ways from the original. Here's Thunder Force 4 from Technosoft, released as Lightning Force on the Genesis in early 1993. This might just be the best shooter in the 16-bit era and probably one of the best shooters of all time, at least as far as I'm concerned. I prefer horizontal shooters over vertical shooters by a massive margin, so this one was heaven for me. It's no cakewalk, and it has incredible visuals and even better music. You felt like a true master if you beat this one. It's got mega power! And that was a lot for a shooter back in the day, and this one certainly put every digit of code to great use. It would be almost impossible to follow this one up well. Technosoft tried though with Thunder Force 5 on the Saturn and the PlayStation. I didn't like this one as much as Thunder Force 4 or even Thunder Force 3 or 2, but it's still really good with lots of challenge and some unique weapons. Everyone should try it. Even though this wasn't as good as Part 4, I'm not here to talk about this one. That's right, there was actually a Thunder Force 6 released exclusively in Japan and also exclusively for the PlayStation 2. It came out all the way in 2008. Now, Thunder Force 6 was initially in development for the Dreamcast, but Technosoft was bought up by a lame pachinko company and, well, that was that. Years and years later, Sega got the rights and made the game themselves, and that's what we have here. Although the game is built with polygons, it's still a side-scrolling 2D shooter. Strangely, you start the game with all your weapons in tow, you don't have to collect them. If you die, you don't lose any of them. This also means that you can't power up your default front and back shots like you can in the previous games. To make up for this, you collect enemy souls when you kill them. These souls charge up a meter on the bottom of the screen that's for your overweapon. You press a button dedicated to this to fire it, and each weapon has their own version of the overweapon. Each time you use it, one segment drains, so it's not more powerful the more full it is or anything like that. You respawn right where you died, even when you continue. The levels are mostly pretty short, lasting maybe 4 minutes if that before you get to the boss. And the bosses are usually pretty easy to take down. The battleship stage is pretty long though, at least compared to the other stages. Its length feels just right, that's what she said, and it's definitely one of the better levels in the game. A lot of the level designs borrow from the previous games, and that doesn't leave this one with much of an identity of its own. In fact, it often feels like a low-budget fan-made game trying to celebrate the greatest hits of the series more than anything. The best moment here, though, has to be when you fight the ships from the previous Thunder Force games. There's a little orb that inhabits the ships and then moves to a newer ship once you beat it. You fight the ships from Thunder Force 3, 4, and 5. This is straight out of Sega Gaga on the Dreamcast. That's right, back in Sega Gaga, you played as a ship where a small object moved between different Sega consoles, and you'd have to fight them. This segment even featured music from the Dreamcast version of Thunder Force 6 that was in production but canceled. What an amazing section of the game this was. The reason it's so similar here in the real Thunder Force 6 is because the guy in charge of this game also did Sega Gaga. Turns out he's a big fan of the Thunder Force series. I mean, how can you not be? Unfortunately, as a whole, the game is extremely short and honestly not very challenging. Once you beat it, you can choose what's basically the Thunder Force 4 ship. When playing as this ship, you need to collect weapon power-ups, and you lose all but the 2 default shots if you die. The game is still easy, but it's a little better this way. Graphically, the game looks okay, but compared to other horizontal shooters on the PlayStation 2 like Gradius 5 or Gradius 5 or maybe Gradius 5, which preceded this game by 4 years, it looks extremely basic. At least it always runs at 60 frames per second though, however there is a bunch of slowdown. Oh, and 480p is supported. The music isn't bad, some of it's even decent. But let's be real here, most of it has absolutely no business being in a Thunder Force game. You just can't have a Thunder Force title without the epic music, but here we are. It's really sad to see the series go out in this manner. I wonder how the Dreamcast Thunder Force 6 would have been had it been completed. I know that at least it would have had better music, that's for sure. Up next is another one where it's not awful or anything, but they just stray too far from the original concepts in many ways, and it just didn't land with audiences as well as they had hoped. ActRaiser came out on the Super Nintendo in 1991 from Enix. This is an amazing game that blew pretty much everyone away at the time. You have incredible hack-and-slash action sequences with responsive control. Between those, you have lengthy portions of the game which are basically a god mode, where you guide groups of people to build their town and protect them from evil. These are pretty cool, a lot more fun than I thought they would be before I played them. Then it's back to fighting monsters and putting your money where your mouth is. The graphics are good, and the faux symphonic music from Yuzo Koshiro really made the game stand out on the console. In 1993, we got ActRaiser 2, also from Enix on the Super Nintendo. I'm guessing that Enix received a lot of negative feedback from those God Mode sections in the first game, because they are absolutely nowhere to be found here. And yes, I missed them. Now, the game is pure action. This wouldn't be much of a problem if the action were any good. You now play as a winged dude who moves as slow as he possibly can. Did you like being quick and nimble in the first game? Well then you can go straight to hell, because this game takes its sweet ass time doing anything. This guy is in no hurry, and I hope you're not either. He does have some new moves that the dude in the first game didn't. He can now swing a sword diagonally up and also stab straight downwards in the jump. He can also double jump, but the double jump here takes a lot of getting used to. There are basically 2 different versions of it. If you hold up, you can float down slowly. If you hold the direction that you're jumping, you'll cover more distance and go faster, but you slide a bit when you land. It's kind of awkward. Continuously holding up will be the closest you get to a regular double jump, and you're going to want to do it so that you remain in control. You have a shield that you can use in some situations, like blocking things that are falling from above, but mostly I didn't really use it. You also have magic that you can use a limited amount of times, and it certainly does come in handy. The stage design is not good. Like, take this jump here that's very early in the game. Yeah, how am I supposed to make this jump? It's very frustrating, and there's no special trick to it or anything. Naturally, when you miss, the enemies below you have respawned and of course hurt you. Is it really necessary to have a jump like this? The jump of course can be made, but damn, what a pain for no reason, and so early in the game too. And how about enemies appearing out of nowhere? What's up with that? There's lots of blind deaths that will happen. It's pretty awesome. The game is hard as balls. However, it can become somewhat enjoyable with some practice. Keep in mind that the key word there is somewhat. One thing that is done well though are the visuals. Most of the stages and all of the enemies look quite nice in most regards. Yuzo Koshiro returns to do the music. However, the style here, while still orchestral, is rather different. It still sounds great, but it's a lot more atmospheric in its structure. It reminds me of the stuff that's in Beyond Oasis on the Genesis, which came out later, also known as Story of Thor. This game does have its fans. I mean, come on though, every game that has ever been made has people that genuinely like them. And I do like certain things about this game, like this platform section here where it auto-scrolls. Yeah, it's hard and maybe a little too slow, but it's really fun. Unfortunately, the pace of the entire game is pretty much a slog. The original ActRaiser's excellence all but guaranteed that there would be an ActRaiser 2. Unfortunately, the overall disappointment in ActRaiser 2 assured us that there would never be an ActRaiser 3. Shinobi from Sega was released in the arcades in 1987. This ninja action platform game is one of my favorite titles from that time. You kill bad guys and rescue kids. You even fight fearsome bosses. You can also use various ninja magic, but only once per stage. And who could forget these classic first-person bonus stages where you try to take out all of the ninjas coming for you? Yeah, it's one hit and you die, but it is an arcade game after all. It absolutely wants your quarters. But if you have the resolve, the game can be beaten on 1 credit, and it will probably cost you less than $30 or $40 in quarters to become that good. This game is a classic for a reason. And no, I'm not going to tell you what that reason is. Mainly because I kinda already did. Sega then released Shadow Dancer to arcades in 1989 as an indirect sequel. Holy hell, this game is bad. Well, mostly. It brings over most of its game design from Shinobi. However, they added a dog companion for you. When the dog starts barking, you can press down and he'll go grab the enemy that he was barking at. The enemy will struggle with the dog instead of constantly attacking you, so it's easy to finish him off. Kill him. The dog can take damage though, and if he does, he shrinks into a puppy and he can't be used for a short while. This whole concept is honestly a great idea, and it can add some strategy to the game. Unfortunately, the level design and enemy placement here leaves a lot to be desired, and the dog ends up being not as useful as he should be. Instead of rescuing kidnapped children, in this game you're rescuing bombs that have been kidnapped. Once you get them all, you're allowed to exit the stage. You still have the one-hit deaths, and if you die, you don't need to rescue any of the bombs that you've already rescued in a stage. These stages are much more relentless than Shinobi was. Enemy projectiles travel super slow, making them more difficult to avoid than you'd think, and you also spend a lot of time sitting there waiting for them to clear your area. The physics have taken a huge downgrade from Shinobi. You don't feature the same nimbleness here, and your hitbox is a little larger. The game is a touch slower as well as less responsive. You can still use ninja magic here. And naturally, there are boss fights to contend with as well. This one has bonus stages that are similar to the original game, but they're not as fun as your ninja stars travel super slow on their way up the building, which features a rather awkward perspective. The graphics have lots of color, but to me it still looks a bit unappealing. There's just something a little bit off looking about them. Would you believe that this game uses a more powerful arcade board than Shinobi did? You'd never know by looking at or listening to this game. That's right, even the audio is worse. The music is mostly unsubstantial and thin. A couple of levels try to have a decent melody, but all of the music and sound effects are forgettable. Strangely, this game is credited to Sega R&D No. 1, also known as Team Shinobi. That's right, the same people who did the first game. I wonder if they assigned some new members on the team to this one. This is an arcade game that doesn't do much to make you want to keep continuing. I am so glad that they improved Shadow Dancer tenfold in every single way possible when putting it on the Genesis. Okay, how can I not possibly have Shenmue 3 in this video? Again, it's technically a playable and even a good game, but perhaps decades of time have raised expectations way too much. Shenmue from Sega arrived on the Dreamcast in 1999. This game was truly ahead of its time as it offered a very realistic world to explore where people went about their daily lives in a small town. You can do menial things like drink cola or even play Sega arcade games. That's pretty badass. You're Ryo, and some guy killed your dad, and now you're out for revenge. That's it, that's the plot. But of course, during the course of your quest, you learn lots of different things about your dad, life, and yourself. If the series ever ends, you just know that Ryo will grow as a person and choose the high ground over revenge. That's how these stories always go. There's lots of fighting and stuff here, and the game as a whole is pretty epic, but sadly, it didn't really find any mainstream appeal. Regardless, it has a ton of fans, and I am one of them. Hell, this is one of my favorite games. Shenmue 2 came out a couple of years later, and it was even better. Now you've taken your revenge quest to China, and everything felt much bigger. Sadly, the game ends on a cliffhanger, and it was thought that Shenmue as a franchise was lost forever. Well, by some miracle, nearly 20 years later, Shenmue 3 came out for the PlayStation 4 and PC from Deep Silver and EaseNet. Or is it WiseNet? Or just YSNet, you know, for Yu Suzuki? I don't know. That's right, Sega was no longer handling Shenmue themselves, which itself is kind of sad. Fans sure waited a long time for this, and, well, overall, it was a letdown in many ways. While the first two games were ahead of their time, this one feels behind the times. It picks up right where Part 2 left off, with a rather mystical and maybe even supernatural turn that happens deep within a cave. It then promptly drops all that and returns to normal mundane life. It's like it never happened. What the hell? You visit Bailu Village and you'll spend a huge portion of the game here. It's not a tremendously exciting village and the story is pretty weak, with not many interesting things that actually happen. The pacing is incredibly slow and the game is padded for length. There are still some things you can do though, like fight others and learn new moves. You can also get into conversations with horny ladies that want to ride you like a bronco back at their house. Stupid Ryo, just come on man, just let them do it.
If you want a drink, just come over to my house.
You can't play Sega arcade games here because it's an ancient Chinese village, but they do have a few amusements that cost money to play. In the first two games, you needed to return home by a certain time to sleep. That's still the case here, but they went all out and made sure you needed to keep yourself fed as well. You lose stamina if you don't eat.
I better eat something before I fall over.
Hell, I'm surprised they don't make you check your blood sugar and cholesterol levels constantly. This feature doesn't do anything to help the game be fun. Eventually, after what feels like 1,000 years, you take a trip to a more modern city. The game definitely becomes more enjoyable here, but still never quite reaches the heights of the first two. The city is really big, but extremely unpopulated. In Shenmue 2, there are tons of people on some of the streets and you can talk to all of them. Here in Shenmue 3, there's not as many people and you can only talk to some of them. It really feels like a step down. There's more Shenmue stuff to do here, like fight, train, and wander around. There are actually arcade games here, but again, no true Sega games, just silly stuff and other random nonsense. Again, it feels like a big step back. Since the game was funded via Kickstarter, there's lots of stuff submitted by fans who paid lots of coin and it feels a bit out of place. But fortunately, it's not forced on you. It does, however, give the feeling that this is a low-budget indie game. Graphically, the game looks okay, not a huge leap up from the titles on the Dreamcast 20 years ago. I mean, it is in HD now and it's also in widescreen. This footage is running on a PS4 Pro, but if you play the game on a PlayStation 5, you'll get near constant 60 frames per second. The audio is cleaner, of course, and less compressed sounding. The music is mostly fine with some good tunes here and there. The game eventually ends and hints that there may someday be a Shenmue 4, which we haven't seen announced yet as of the making of this video. The biggest flaw in this game is that not much really happens. There were no big reveals, no plot points that were beyond mildly interesting, it's a whole lot of nothing. It wouldn't seem as bad story-wise if it were much shorter, but they padded a very small part of the overall story into its very own game. This one really needs more, and compared to the first two games, it just doesn't live up. I still enjoyed my time with it for the most part, though.
Who exactly are these people?
Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega came out in 1991 on the Genesis. I don't really need to go into any detail on this game. I mean, if you're watching GameSack, you probably already know all about this one. Well, unless you just watch because you think I'm sexy. But really, that's probably only 10 to 15% of you. The rest of you know the standards that this game set, along with its sequel, Sonic 2. This one introduces Tails, whom I hate. Then there was Sonic 3 along with Sonic & Knuckles, which has a more gritty look to the visuals, but it still sticks to the classic formula and it's a quality game. Now, I could pick any number of future Sonic games for this episode, but let's go with the numbered sequel. That's right, Sonic the Hedgehog 4, Episode 1. This came out in 2010 for the Wii, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. It has since been released for more platforms. Anyway, this is the PlayStation 3 version. They decided to split the game up into 2 episodes for some reason, and that right there is already a strike against it. It's also digital only, no physical release. I'd say strike 2, but a lot of people simply don't care about that. Back then it was a pretty big deal though. The developers, who also handled the Game Boy Advance and DS Sonic games, decided to stick to 2D, and I can definitely respect that. Unfortunately, they really didn't seem to get what made the Genesis originals what they were. The physics here are extremely off. For one, it takes Sonic longer to go from standing still to his full-on sprint mode, which makes the game feel a lot slower. Well, it doesn't just feel slower, it is slower. The entire game feels like you're holding the controller in a vat of glue. After playing for a bit, my thumb hurts because I'm pressing so hard in a vain attempt to make him move at the speed he should be moving. You can't stack momentum when you're a ball to gain more, which is infuriating. Hell, as you can see, you'll often be taken out of ball mode or whatever you want to call it in mid-air. Speaking of momentum, you come to a stop really fast. This may be fine if you've never played a Sonic game before, but if you have, you're not going to like this. The game only has 4 zones. The design of each have been rehashed from the old games. Even the boss fights are rehashed from the old games. The bonus stages are here, and now you control the rotation. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, it's not. I don't know how they ruined these, but man, they sure did. You do have the homing attack that was introduced in the adventure games. The stage design is boring, as are the visuals. Okay, well, they're colorful and there are a ton of parallax layers, but they're mostly pre-rendered and just look ugly. The music tries to be chiptune-esque for some reason. It ranges from not bad to quite bad. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2 came out 2 years later for the same consoles. In this one, Tails has been added. You can't play as Sonic alone. Believe me, I wouldn't be playing with Tails tagging along if I weren't forced to. The gameplay relies on being able to join up with Tails in many areas for special moves. Man, I can't decide if this one is better or worse than Episode 1. If the controls and physics are any better here, it's extremely tough to tell. I think the visuals are better though. This time they're rendered polygons instead of the pre-rendered junk from Episode 1. At least the main foregrounds are. Sonic and the enemies look less out of place here than they did pasted onto the backgrounds in the first episode. One thing that really rubs sandpaper on my butthole though is that the developers really went all out on the underwater parts. Man, do they love these underwater levels. You think Sonic was moving too slow normally in these games? Well, it's more than twice as bad underwater. There's simply way too much of it here. The boss fights are new, but wow, they sure take a long time. The bonus stages here are like those from Sonic 2, so if you enjoyed those, well, these are pretty good. The music in this one is every bit as not that good. If you have Episode 1, you can lock on with it so you can play as Metal Sonic in 4 acts. Either episode of Sonic 4 or both combined together just can't capture any of the magic that the Genesis games may have had. If you do want a modern 2D Sonic game that's actually really good instead of whatever this is trying to be, play Sonic Mania. And there you go, some disappointing sequels and follow-ups. I hope this wasn't too negative of an episode for you, but It's fun to do these sometimes. So what are some sequels or follow-ups that disappointed you, and why? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSag. So you like RoboCop, do you? You like robots and you like cops, you like your robos and your cops, it wets your whistle, it grabs you by the short and curlies? Well, let me tell you, you haven't seen anything yet. Cyber. That's right, now there's the Cyber Shinobi. Shinobi is a ninja and a ninja is better than a cop and cyber is better than robo and we put cyber in Shinobi, the Cyber Shinobi. We've taken Shinobi and cybered him. Cyber. We've cybered everything about this game. Not only Shinobi now the Cyber Shinobi, but the evil criminal syndicate Zed is now Cyber Zed. Cyber. Cyber action, cyber graphics, cyber sound, the Cyber Shinobi. Cyber. Why play with wimpy RoboCop when you can power up and play with the Cyber Shinobi? That's right, friends. Now you have the privilege of purchasing the Cyber Shinobi immediately. Cyber.